Hi, in this AI and C# video on the Microsoft Agent Framework, we're going to look at workflows and the human in the loop factor of it. So let's quickly see a small demo and then we'll go into the code. So what I've built is a human in the loop workflow where the AI is providing a little quiz on what animal it's thinking of, and we need to guess. This could easily be done without workflows as well, but that's not the important part here. We want to see how we send these requests to the user. So in this case, it's telling me it has an animal that thinks of and it lives in the ocean. So let's guess if it's a fish. That was not the one. It has several rows of sharp teeth in its mouth. Could be a shark. And it was, and we got back in 2 tries. So let's see how this is implemented. So we have in workflows, we have a workflow human in the loop here. And what we do is we new up a normal agent. In this case, it's a judge of a guessing game where it is to guess animals, and each hint should only give one fact. Then we have some animals to choose from, and it will randomly choose an animal. And then we make an initial hint for this. So we want to have, we just use structured output of giving a string back and have a vague hint of the animal and one of these. Then we need to make something called a request port. A request port is the way we can make a workflow have a human in the loop interaction, in that we can send a message and then check if that is a request info event. So we built one up and we want it to have the input of a feedback to the user and an output of a string. And we just call it guess animal. So in this case, we are then gonna make an evaluate and hint executor that needs the agent and the animal to guess. We'll go into that in 1 second. And then we build our workflow where we say the request port is the initializer, and that should give once it have a string back, meaning a guess, it should give it to the evaluator, and the evaluator should give it back to the request port. And at some point, the evaluator should not request new data. It should just say, yes, you have guessed it. So we have that, and we set up our event, but let's first look at the evaluator. So the evaluator is just an executor that gets a string, meaning what the user have guessed. And up front, we get what animals it should give hints about, and the agent it should use to do that. We make a small integer to keep track of the number of tries, and we make a list of what hints we have already given, so we don't give the same hints again and again. Then we take the normal handle async of an executor, and we get our message, meaning the guess from the user. And then we say, okay, they have now used their first try, and is this the right answer for guessing the animal that is this animal we guess? And we put in here that it's allowed to have spelling errors if you write the name of the shark wrong or something like that. And we just give the message, so the question. Because we don't want to just have that they need to write it in the exact word or not have any pre or postfix. It should be allowed to say, is the animal a tiger? Is the animal a bear? And so on. And by using AI to evaluate, we can do that. We can even get spelling errors, and if it's a grizzly bear, and the user just say bear. So we can allow how accurate the user should be, and not just an if statement. So we call the agent about that, and it gets back in a structured output with a boolean true or false if the answer is correct. And if the answer is correct, we end the game by calling context.yield output, meaning stop sending more user input requests. And we just say, we guessed it, the answer was indeed this animal, and we tried this many times. If it's not correct, we want to generate a new hint. So we say generate a new hint for a child to guess the animal. The hints are already given, and then we give those so it doesn't give the same hint again and again. So make the hint unique and don't repeat the same hint parts. We ask the agent to just make the hint for us using structured output as a string, and we say that is the new hint. We give that new hint, and then we send back our message in terms of a feedback to the user, which is the new hint. So the feedback was the one we put into the request port. So now then, when we have our workflow, we can start the workflow by saying we want to have an initial hint, and I have this initialize if it's the first time to say I'm guessing guess the animal I'm thinking of versus this is not the animal I was thinking of, depending if it's first try or second try and so on. So we give that as our initial feedback, meaning our input to our workflow, and we just start a normal in-process execution with a stream async. We get our handle and we can watch the stream. Then we interested in two different events. We are interested in the request info event, meaning the human in the loop part, where we can just go in and use normal console here, but in a real life scenario, you would of course make a real GUI to give the input or send an email that they should respond back or anything. But at some point, that handler should send a response back because that's the only thing that will make the workflow continue on. So we just ask for the new guess and show the hint, and then we get our response that we can send along into the event. If it is the right answer, we just write that out. So if we set some breakpoints, we can just see it in action. So we get our agents, we get our animals, and the animal we want in this case is a dolphin. So we want the initial input here, and in that case, the result was this animal is known for being intelligent and playful in the water. Then we give that to our request port, and we create our evaluator so it knows what animal it should work for. And then we have our workflow we create, and let me set down a breakpoint here, here, and down in the handle async. So we start the stream, and the first thing that happens in the stream is it comes back, because it's a human in the loop, we start with one of those events. And we get our request here, and our request was of type feedback to the user. So it was the initial hint and our init meaning true. So we write out the hint so the user can guess. And now this will wait until we actually give an answer back. So let's say we get it wrong. We think it's a panda for some reason. We now get into the evaluator. The evaluator have received the message, the word panda. and it will check, is panda the correct word? Does it sound like the panda is a dolphin? And the answer back is, of course, no, that's false. So we go in and generate the new hint. And the new hint would be the animal is very intelligent and can learn tricks easily. So we send that back using context, and we're sending it back as a feedback to the user. So if I press F5, we can end up with a new of these request events. That can be a feedback to the user. It is. And we now get that back, and the user can try again. We can guess it's a dolphin. Let's write it a little incorrect without Dolphina, for example. Could be a child hit it wrong. It will be sad if the child will then have it wrong just because they spelled it a bit wrong. So we do it like that. We ask, is that the right answer? Let's see if it's okay with that. Yeah, it is close enough, so it feels like that's okay. Again, we decide the rules how strict. It comes back with a yield output, and we end up with the output event. Seeing that we guessed it right, it was indeed a dolphin, despite us not writing it completely correct. So that's everything there is to it in how you add some human in the loop into a workflow.